Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joe Seifert, and I would like to welcome everybody on this wonderful occasion to welcome Lynchburg's native son, Desmond T Doss, who grew up just a short distance from here. PFC Doss was an exceptional man who, through tremendous spiritual and physical strength, saved 75 wounded soldiers in one day 72 years ago on May 5th, 1945, under intense enemy fire in the Battle of Okinawa. Now I would like to introduce to you our mayor, who has been a member of City Council since 2002. Please welcome the Honorable Joan F. Foster.
Joe, thank you so much. And thank all of you all for coming here and finding a parking place. But most of all, we want to thank Mr. Doss for being here today. What a privilege it is to be able to do this. So officially I say good morning to all of you all. I felt it such a privilege, and I did see Hacksaw Ridge. I did and was at the dedication of the highway, and I've always been a fan. So it is my pleasure to welcome everyone here today for the unveiling of this commemorative marker placed in honor of Lynchburg native Desmond T Doss. We are just so proud that this Congressional Medal of Honor and a Purple Heart recipient grew up right here in I call it Fairview Heights, and it's the Fairview area. We're pleased that his story has finally been told to our nation and to international nations. It's wonderful. And that he has finally been recognized. So generations to come will know about this man who held on to his strong beliefs. What a conviction he had. And became a hero who put his own well-being aside to help others. The city of Lynchburg is also honored to welcome Desmond Sr.'s son, Desmond T Doss Jr., here today. Your father left a legacy that any son would be proud of. He also left a legacy and an example for all of us. One of service, sacrifice, faith, and commitment. Let us not forget these lessons from this day forward, and may we ensure that future generations, not only here, but across our fine state, learn about and appreciate Desmond T Doss. And we thank you, Joe, thank you, all the folks, and we'll talk about that later, who made this marker possible. Thank you from the bottom of our heart. And I want to recognize my fellow council member, Sterling Wilder. I believe this is your award, Sterling. Yes. Sterling, it's nice to have you here. And I don't know if any of my other fellow council members are here, but, you know, the city of Lynchburg is very, very proud of its native son. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Foster. At this time, I would like Mr. David Stokes to come to the podium. David is a U.S. Army Vietnam veteran and the president of the Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 196, which is our local chapter.
Yes, sir.
David.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Mrs. Mayor, council members, Desmond Jr., ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all for coming out today. This is a monumental, historic day. I grew up in Fairview Heights, and I lived here until the time I got married, except for 2 years in the military. Matter of fact, I grew up right there in that house from 16 until I got married, when I moved into Campbell County to be next to my business. And unfortunately, growing up, I had never heard of Desmond Doss, even though he lived on Easley Avenue one street over. And the man was very quiet, and he was very humble. And I can remember going to my friend's buddy that lived right across the street from his parents. And they would be on the porch. They were quiet. You probably never know they were there. They were almost like if you didn't look, you'd never see them. That's how quiet and humble they were. And as I grew up, I saw the movie a few years ago on the conscientious objector. And I said, wow, he grew up in Fairview Heights. He is not only a national hero, but a hometown hero. And I said, to know that he lived right behind where I was growing up, that was awesome. And then I had the privilege of meeting Harlow Reynolds. Harlow, raise your hand. Harlow was the man that got the ball spearheaded and got the movement started to recognize this person that is so long overdue. Fairview Heights was a blue-collar working neighborhood. Most of the people worked at either the Producteur, the hosiery mill, cotton mill, or the Imperial Red, Blue Buckle. And I cannot tell you how proud I am to be here. I was also privileged to be on the committee to solicit funds to put the plaque up. And I told Desmond Jr. just a little while ago, it was my mission to see that this marker went up in Fairview Heights, the neighborhood where he grew up in, and I'm so proud to see that that is finally taking place, and it's going to be dedicated today. And in closing, Desmond Jr., welcome back to Fairview Heights.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes. And now, it is my honor to introduce to you Desmond Doss's son, Desmond T Doss Jr. He comes to us from his home in Washington State to be present as we honor his father. Please come forward, Mr. Doss.
Thank you, Joe. This is so special. This is just so special. I got to have a brief word with David earlier, and I'm going to say something here. I just want to express appreciation for what you're doing here, Mayor Falter, David. And like was just mentioned, thank you, Harlow. Thank you. This has a lot of meaning for me, personally. Like you said, my family was a quiet bunch of folks. They didn't say much. And my dad was one of those people that never really wanted any acclaim given to him. He was a very quiet and humble man. That was just his nature. And I'm going to say something here once, and then I hope we never hear of it again. But it's important to know and to mark this time and place. And that's it. When I was young and living at home, and I heard my mother and my father talking about the fact that all across the country and even out of the country, there were markers and statues and monuments and things. And there was no real acknowledgement in Lynchburg, Virginia, my father's hometown. And he felt that keenly. It's one of the few, if only things I ever knew that he expressed that kind of sentiment about. He was very aware of the fact that in his own hometown there was little or no acknowledgement of what had happened with him. And so to come here last night and see this, whatever's under there, I mean, it was incredibly gratifying. And the location, thank you for putting it here. The old home place is just through the trees here. You could hit it with a rock nearly. So this is such an appropriate place to have this. I hope that my father is remembered for what he stood for, which was unconditional love. Those of you that have seen the documentaries, read the books, or seen Hacksaw Ridge see that this was discussed, and that was his quality. This ability to love unconditionally, and I hope all of us can internalize that in our own lives, and he had that compassion. We all know, the great teachers and stuff that talked about that. All the religions have that, always talking about love and compassion and acceptance and forgiveness. And it sounds real good for behind the pulpit, but here was a person who actually lived that, and so to be acknowledged in the town where he grew up today just has great meaning. I wish my father could be here to see this. But I want to thank everybody that has contributed and put their energy into bringing this about today. Thank you very much.
What Mr. Doss just talked about is sort of a segue into what I wanted to let you know. It was in February of 2007, Mayor Foster, when we were down there in Duguid's parking lot and we dedicated the Desmond T Doss Memorial Expressway. A bitterly freezing day, unlike today. Unfortunately, your father had passed away, I guess, 6 months or so prior to that, and he didn't live to see that. But this is sort of an add-on to that. And let me give you a little background to how this came about. On October 25th last fall, 3 of us were sprucing up the 2 entry signs on either end of the expressway by planting mums. Marine veteran Steve Bozeman, an Air Force veteran Harlow Reynolds, and myself, I'm a Navy veteran. We discussed the possibility of further recognizing PFC Doss. We then asked Director of the Lynchburg Museum System, Doug Harvey, raise your hand, Doug, he's back there, to come on board. We immediately started fundraising for the highway marker and a commemorative marker for the World War II level of Monument Terrace. At this time, Army veteran David Stokes came on board. You just heard from David a few minutes ago, and helped Steve and I raise over $5,480 in 30 days. Actually, more money was raised, and that's going to the Carrie Langern marker on Washington Street at some time in the future. Concurrent with the fundraising, Doug Harvey was a real jewel in this. He handled all of the logistics of procuring the markers and finalizing the wording. And the Virginia Department of Historic Resources was very helpful, especially board member Aaron Ashwell and Randy Jones. Is Miss Ashwell here? Would you please come forward and just say a few words to us, okay? Just tell us a little bit about
Thanks. Delighted to be here. Really briefly, you all don't need to hear from me. I mean, we're so delighted to be able to recognize this story, which is long overdue. When I came of age, both my grandparents fought in World War II, and that generation is disappearing, and we need to tell their story. And this is one of many ways that we can pass on the values that that generation set for us. The state board, we get requests for markers, we screen them, we help put together the history, but the legwork was all done here. So thank you, we're delighted to see this going up.
Thank you, Ms. Ashwell. Once the procurement went forward, we recognized that we needed some guidance and expertise to have a suitable ceremony. These things just don't happen, by the way. You don't get a bunch of old guy veterans saying, we're going to put this on. So I called Joanne Martin. Joanne's sitting right back there, the Director of Communications and Marketing for the City of Lynchburg. And I says, Joanne, what can you do to help us? You know, she was really wonderful. She said and did everything possible, and her staff, to put this ceremony together. I just loved your can-do attitude, let me tell you. Assisting Joanne were her staff members, and I'm going to mention them. Luann Hunt, graphics designer Trish Roth, Jan Ramsey, and the two video production gentlemen that are here today, Phil Spinner. Where is Phil? You're hiding. And Steve Smallshaw behind the camera. Finally, the Lynchburg Department of Public Works stepped up to the plate, and we especially want to thank the Traffic Engineering Department for the installation of this marker. Would all the military veterans please raise your hand so you can be recognized and we can thank you. Thank you so much for the service to our country. And now I would like the past commander of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, a former Marine and Vietnam veteran who was wounded in combat, Mr. Steve Bozeman, to come forward. Yes, sir.
All right, can you hear me okay? Distinguished guests, Mayor Doss Jr., glad to have everybody here. 10 years ago, I was with Joe and David and some others, Harlow, and we out there on that freezing morning dedicating that highway. And here we are a little over 10 years later doing this, which is fantastic. And I'm just so glad to be a veteran who recognizing our previous veterans who served and did what not Harlow Jr., but Desmond T Doss did 72 years ago. Wow. You already heard all the history about him, so I won't repeat that. But what I will do, as Joe mentioned, we had a fundraiser real quick, and we had the Vietnam Veterans, 196, the Military of the Purple Heart, Chapter 1607, Lynchburg Area Veterans Council, Chuck Olson, president there, and American Legion Writers. So, and a whole bunch of very generous Lynchburg citizens who are here today to make this happen. I'm going to mention the Lynchburg Historical Foundation made a donation, the Lynchburg Museum Foundation, a donation, Dr. Ernie Marshall, Miss Nancy Hunter, who was here, Bill Coaster, Mr. Prophet Joe Seifert, Tom Webb, Gary Case, Witt Construction, Moose Lodge 715, and some others who wish to remain anonymous. So we had a lot of very generous donors in a very short time. And once we got that, we got with Doug, and next thing you know, here it is, folks. It's going to be dedicated real quick. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And now it's time to unveil this commemorative marker in honor of Desmond T Doss. Madam Mayor Foster and Mr. Doss, would you please come forward? And please do us the honor.
Jump up high.
Oh, boy.
Joe, if you get on this side, you can reach.
Help them out a little bit, David, because they got tape all over that thing. You get out of your way.
There we go. Beautiful. Oh, thank you.
Just throw it down, Desmond. There you go. Y'all got your pictures? I'm Joe Seifert, and I would like to welcome everybody to this wonderful occasion to honor Lynchburg's native son, Desmond T Doss. PFC Doss was an exceptional man who, through tremendous spiritual and physical strength, saved 75 wounded soldiers in one day 72 years ago on May 5th, 1945, under intense enemy fire for the Battle of Okinawa. American Legion Post 16, will you please present the colors?
Color guard. Pin. Hut. Forward. March. Color guard. Halt. Post. Color. Face. Color. Assemble.
Would Mr. Stephen M. Doss, the principal of the Desmond T Doss Christian Academy, please come forward and offer the invocation?
Good afternoon. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we are here today to honor one of your servants, Desmond Doss, a man who faced unimaginable adversity by not leaning on his understanding, but leaning on yours. What an example Desmond became to us all by allowing your Holy Spirit to work through him. We started out on a battlefield with a prayer, "What do you want me to do?" It led Desmond to going back into the hands of the enemy, not once, but many, many times, to render aid to his fallen comrades. We look at this 150-pound man and say, how is this possible? And you tell us in your word, all things are possible through you. Desmond's story starts out touching some 75 lives of his fellow soldiers, but now it touches lives of people all over the world. His story is one that shows humanity that the Holy Spirit is capable of when one of his servants fully trusts in you. My prayer here today is that the Holy Spirit is present at this ceremony and continues to reach out to others in a way that demonstrates how a humble, selfless servant of yours can do mighty works in your name. I pray that all we do and say here today brings honor and glory to our God. This is my prayer in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Doss. I would like to introduce to you our mayor, who has been a member of the Lynchburg City Council since 2002. Please welcome the Honorable Joan F. Foster.
They didn't bring my stool. So some of you may not see me, but however, it's okay. The spirit of what we're doing will permeate that. Thank you, Joe, for the introduction. To our honored guests and my fellow members of council, two of whom I think are here today, Councilmember Sterling Wilder, Ward 2 representative, and Councilmember Jeff Helgeson, Ward 3 representative. Thank you all for being here for this wonderful afternoon, all of you that are assembled, and officially good afternoon. What a beautiful day in many, many ways. It is to honor Lynchburg's own native son, Desmond T Doss. It was my pleasure to take part in the commemoration of the highway marker a little bit earlier in Fairview Heights. That was a glorious event as well. I was struck at that moment and talking to his son how a man from such humble beginnings could do such monumental things, who would go on and become a Purple Heart and a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. Desmond T Doss was an exceptional man, and it's been a while before we have honored that exception. And I'm sorry for that, Mr. Doss, that we haven't done this when he was living. You know what? He didn't save 75 men, though, for fame and glory. He did it because it was the right thing to do. He was a man of strong faith and conviction, and although he faced ridicule from his peers, he never, ever wavered in his beliefs. I thank everyone who worked so diligently to make this day possible. From our veterans, thank you, to the Historical Foundation, to Doug Harvey, who is with our museum system, and you know what, so many others. what better way? I was thinking as I was coming over, what better way to celebrate the birthday of our nation on Independence Day than to celebrate a real American hero like Desmond T. Doss. So, thank all of you all for coming out, standing in the heat, listening to the speeches. I wish each and every one of you a wonderful 4th of July, and may God bless America, may God bless our community, and may God bless each and every one of you all. Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
I need my speech. You got me. I think the mayor's trying to take my words here. I don't know. Thank you, Mayor Foster. Next, a little background. I think you all should know that this event, as the mayor alluded to, did not just happen. On October 25th last fall, 3 of us were sprucing up the 2 entry signs on either end of the Desmond Doss Memorial Expressway by planting mums. Marine veteran Steve Bozeman, right here. Air Force veteran Harlow Reynolds, sitting right down here. Raise your hand, Harlow. And myself, I'm a Navy veteran. We discussed the possibility of further recognizing PFC Doss. We then asked the director of the Lynchburg Museum System, Doug Harvey, Doug's right back here, to come on board. We immediately started fundraising for the highway marker, which we just dedicated a couple hours ago on Campbell Avenue, by the way, and a commemorative marker for the World War II level on Monument Terrace. At this time, Army veteran David Stokes came on board and helped Steve and I raise over $5,480 in 1 month to fund the projects. And by the way, we raised another $2,000 for the Carrie Langer marker, another Medal of Honor recipient. That's going in up on Washington Street in a few months, once it's approved by the state. Where are you, David? David helped us. Concurrent with the fundraising, Doug Harvey handled all of the logistics of procuring the markers and finalizing the wording on each marker. That was a monumental task, especially for the highway marker, as we had to get the state approval for all that. And in order to place any marker on Monument Terrace, we needed the permission of the Historic Preservation Commission and the members of the Lynchburg City Council. A big thanks to all those members for your support. Thank you, Stuart, and down there. Once the procurement went forward, we recognized that we needed guidance and expertise to have a suitable ceremony. I called Ms. Joanne Martin, the Director of Communications and Marketing for the City of Lynchburg, and Ms. Martin was wonderful. She said and did all she and her staff could do to put this ceremony together. I love her can-do attitude. Joanne, she's sitting right here. Raise your hand so they can see you. But she didn't do it alone. She has a staff, Luann Hunt, graphics designer Trish Ross, Jan Ramsey, and video production specialist Phil Spinner sitting right down here, and Steve Smallshaw behind the camera. I further want to recognize the assistance of Ms. Jeannie Allen of the Desmond T Doss Council for Research. Please raise your hand. Thank you so much, Jeannie, for your help. And now the veterans. I want all the military veterans to raise your hands so we may recognize and thank you for your service to our country. Thank you. I would like the past commander of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, a former Marine and Vietnam veteran who was wounded in combat, Mr. Steve Bozeman, to come forward. Steve?
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'll be brief. I was glad to be on the committee helping this get this memorial started and raising the funds, and a lot of very generous folks out there who contributed. Of course, the Lynchburg Area Veterans Council, the Vietnam Veterans of America, the Military of the Purple Heart, the Legion Riders, and others took point on the fundraiser, but we also had donations from, as mentioned earlier, the Lynchburg Historical Foundation, Lynchburg Museum Foundation, Dr. Ernie Marshall, Miss Nancy Hunter, Bill Coaster, Mr. Prophet, Joe Seifert, Tom Webb, Gary Case, Witt Construction, Moose Lodge 715, and others who wish to remain anonymous. So like Joe mentioned earlier, it was a successful fundraiser. We got 2 monuments raised, and the Carrie Langhorne, which is the other the Medal of Honor recipient that we did not want to overlook once we recognized Desmond T Doss. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this and coming out on a hot day and honoring this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And now it is my distinct honor to introduce you to Desmond Doss's son, Desmond T Doss Jr. He comes to us from his home in Washington State to be present as we honor his father. Please welcome Mr. Doss.
I just had the most wonderful thing happen to me a few minutes ago. Somebody walked up to me and held out their hand, said, "Welcome home." I used to say I'd go home if I had any idea where it was. You know, I started off here when I was a little kid. This is also the birthplace of my father and where he grew up. This is where he was inducted into the service. This is where he came back to. And, you know, to be here today and have him honored in this town is very, very meaningful to me. And I hope all the people that have participated in bringing this about and being a party to having this occur, I sincerely thank you for my family. And I know my dad would be very, very pleased. I had mentioned earlier that he acutely was aware of the fact that there had been monuments and statues and markers placed kind of all over the world, but not so much in Lynchburg. And so today that is not the case. And I personally feel very, very gratified and pleased, as I know my father would. And once again, I want to say thank you to everyone that had a hand in bringing this about. And, of course, special mention to Harlow Reynolds sitting down here, who was the person who realized that this was needed. He started talking to me 17 years ago about this, you know, and today I see he's sitting here and he's getting to see the fruits of his energy and works and the people that he excited to the idea to do all of this. You know, it's not just about a bunch of markers and roads and things like that. I hope people leave here today aware of what my father was about. And what he personified was a thing called an altruistic attitude. And that's the unselfish caring for the welfare of other people. The unselfish caring for the welfare of other people. And he demonstrated unconditional love and acceptance and forgiveness and compassion, these spiritual principles. You know, a lot of times people say, well, your dad was patriotic. Yes, he was. But that's not what motivated him. You know, some people say, well, he was religious. Well, he was. But that's not what motivated him. What motivated him was that unselfish caring for the welfare of other people. I hope that when we leave here today, we carry with us the idea that we can have that ourselves, you know. Somebody showed me a T-shirt a while ago that somebody had made up. And it talks about, help me just get one more, you know. When we leave here today, I hope we have that motto in our mind that we can touch at least one person, you know. We may not get medals of honor. We may not have to fight a war. We may not have to do that. But, you know, everywhere we go into the 7-Eleven, we go, you know, wherever we go, we meet people. And we don't know their story. We don't know their life. But, you know, at the end of the day, there's not a nickel's worth of difference between any of us, you know. And so we can have that care and that compassion and that loving attitude to everybody that we meet. And that's what my father stood for. And that's what he personified. And he set an example of how a regular, ordinary person from a blue-collar neighborhood can have an effect that reaches clear around the world. And we can do that one person at a time ourselves. I hope we walk away from here today after sitting out here in the hot sun with that idea in our head and get it baked in there somehow. I feel very grateful to be here today. And somebody said, what was it like to see all these people up here at the marker a while ago on the side of the highway? Well, it was just like it is now to see people from the community come out and be supportive of something that's happening right here in their own community. You know, this is us coming together. That's what this is, you know. And I thank you for welcoming me home. I want to present a book to Harvey here from the museum, if you don't mind. It's a book by Booth and Herndon. It was first put out under the name of Unlikeliest Hero some years back, and now it's been republished, and it's available online. And I wanted the library to have a copy of that. Doug Harvey?
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Doss. Mayor Foster, could I ask you to please return to the podium, please?
For your presentation.
I want to also invite my fellow council members, Councilmember Wilder and Councilmember Helgeson, if you could come up and help with this, because this comes from our city, and we represent our city. Our folks here have elected us to be their representatives, and we want to present this very, very special, very special award to you in honor of your father. It is today a picture of Mike. Come on up. Here we are. Here we are. A picture of Monument Terrace and a key to our city. So we're going to let you leave here, but when you leave, you're going to take a piece of our city with you. And you are always, always welcome home. This is home. And please feel free to call it home. And when you are not at home, you can look and see home. So thank you for returning home today and for giving us this wonderful opportunity to honor your father and to honor you. Thank you. Thank you.
This is beautiful.
It is. I love this picture of Monument Terrace. And, of course, I want to give you all our city pin as well. So there are a couple of them for you. So thank you. And you've been pinned officially by the mayor and by 2 city council members. So thank you. I don't know if you have any other words to say, but I'll give it back to Joe. Thank you.
Don't go away, because now it is time to unveil the marker. So I'd like the mayor and Mr. Doss to do the honors up here.
Okay, you want to count?
We have experience.
Yes.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I don't know about that.
4, 5, 6.
All right, there it is. You know, this marker would not be here but for the kind assistance of the Lynchburg Public Works Department, and in particular Mr. Jerry Kelly, who supervised its installation. And the research and photographs were graciously provided by Miss Jeannie Allen of the Desmond Doss Research Council. At this time, I'd like to call Steve to the podium for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2.
Thank you, Steve. American Legion Post 16, would you please retrieve the colors?
Color guard. In. Up. Forward. Mark. Color guard. Halt. Retrieve. Color. Take. Color. Assemble.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to honor this very special man who was so unselfish as he served his country. I ask that we all go forth to love and serve one another in the shadow of the example of Desmond Doss. And one other thing, the big building on the top of the stairs here is our old 1855 courthouse. It is our museum. It is open and it is free and it is cold in there. So I will ask you to come on up and take a look at all the wonderful exhibits we have. This concludes this commemoration marker ceremony. Thank you.